There are 8 billion of us on the world today. We are a lot of people. This is a very crowded planet. And part of our story is the challenge of how we're going to live together. 8 billion of us, with the population rising each year by 70 to 80 million added, in a way that is prosperous for peoples all over the world, just and fair for peoples all over the world, peaceful as we interconnect with each other, and of course, environmentally sustainable. How we can thrive on a crowded planet. Now, 8 billion is a lot, and if we consider ourselves as a mammal of our given size, the number of members of our species would be expected to be perhaps 20 million or 50 million if we compared ourselves, say, to grade 8 populations or to other mammal species in the world. But rather than being 20 million humans or Homo sapiens around the planet, we are now 8 billion. The basic fact is that human beings have appropriated so much of nature. We have commandeered so much of the photosynthetic production of plants. We eat so much of other animal species that so much of the earth now is devoted to keeping alive not 20 million humans or 50 million humans, but 8 billion humans. Of course, it's a big challenge for the planet. That's why so many aspects of the Earth's physical systems are really out of balance right now, and why the challenge of environmental sustainability is so great. What you can see in this graph, which shows the estimated human population over the period of civilization, that is, over the period of the last 12,000 years since the beginning of agriculture at the end of the last ice age, is that the population, as best as it can be estimated and deciphered by demographers and historians and archaeologists, has soared only in recent years. If we go back 12,000 years ago to 10,000 BCE, before the Common Era, of course, nobody knows how many human beings there were at the time, but it really was only a few million as the best estimate. And as you can see from this graph, the best estimate of the human population is that for a very long period of time, in fact, all the time before the so-called Common Era, starting in AD 1, the human population was quite small compared to what it is today. From a few million, it gradually increased to perhaps 300 million or so at the beginning of the Common Era, meaning at 1 AD. And then, as you can see from this attempt at estimating human population size from the beginning of civilization to today, the population continued to grow gradually, slowly, for centuries and centuries, with its ups and downs. One of the most famous periods of down was the plague that hit Europe in the middle of the 14th century, the Black Death of Europe, which claimed the lives of perhaps a third of the European population. Another calamity that beset the human population was after Christopher Columbus's voyages at the end of the 15th century, from 1492 onward. The Europeans brought the diseases of the old world, and that led to massive epidemics and deaths of the population of the indigenous Americans in the 16th century. So human population had its tremendous periods of catastrophic decline, but also long periods of gradual rise. But as you can see from this graph, to reach 8 billion was a very recent phenomenon. And we're going to understand that recent phenomenon by studying clearly the different ages of globalization. And notably, we're going to see that the increase of the human population picked up pace in the fifth age of globalization, the age of oceanic empires, which started with the voyages of Christopher Columbus and of Vasco da Gama and of the other navigators at the end of the 15th century and the 16th century who made possible, created this network of empires, European-based, but spreading around the world. And as we'll come to understand, that led to massive demographic change, catastrophe for indigenous populations in the Americas, but also a rise of populations in other parts of the world as food supplies began to increase with more oceanic trade. But as you can see from this remarkable graph, the soaring human population that took us from a few 100 million human beings to 8 billion is a very recent phenomenon, essentially in the last 2.5 centuries, the last 250 years. Because the takeoff of the human population to billions comes with the sixth age of globalization, the industrial age. It is with industrialization, based, as we'll learn, on the invention and the dissemination of the steam engine and all that that enabled, including oceanic transport at much greater speeds and much greater bulk, and rail based on steam. That opened up vast areas for more food production and for more global trade in food, and also global trade and shipments of fertilizers that enabled higher yields of agricultural production. By the 19th century, suddenly there was a massive increase in the world's production of food. And with that came a massive increase of the human population. As of the end of the 19th century, around the year 1800, the human population was perhaps 900 million people, not quite a billion. The first time the human population reached a billion people was in the early 1800s, in the early years of the 19th century, sometimes estimated to be around 1820 or 1830. It took another century, until around 1930, for the world population to reach 2 billion people. But then the rate of increase in the population continued to rise. More food production, the spread of modern science of population health, vaccines, antibiotics, reduced mortality rates. All of this led to a massive increase of the world's population. And so the world went from 2 billion people around 1930 to around 3 billion people by the middle of the 20th century, to 4 billion people by the 1970s, and continuing surge of population until 8 billion people became our common humanity in the first years of the 2020s. We're on a trajectory where the world population will continue to increase to more than 9 billion people, most likely by the middle of the 21st century. And then all depends on the future dynamics of household choices, of how many children to have, on patterns of urbanization, on how families develop in different parts of the world, all subjects that we will be discussing in this course. What we can say is that 8 billion people today on the planet is really an astounding fact from a biological point of view, since a species like ours typically, if it weren't human beings, would be expected to have, as I've said, some tens of millions of individuals, but we have 8 billion because we've commandeered so much of the planet with our technologies to feed this massive population. But this is also a huge challenge for us politically, socially, economically, and environmentally. This is a core topic for us in the ages of globalization because our aim is a prosperous, just, environmentally sustainable, and peaceful life for the people on our crowded planet. That is the challenge that we will be exploring together in this course.